We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Antry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. But this week is not a question and answer, so this week is a special interview that we have.
That's right. This week we are doing an interview with Gary Yacoubian, the CEO and president of SVS. For those of you that don't remember that, I don't know how that could possibly be the case since we talk about them all the time.
Might be new
And
listeners. We wouldn't mind.
Could be. Hey, welcome to the podcast.
That's right.
Patreon.com/AVRant podcast.
Gonna get mentioned again.
Yeah, don't worry. We're talking with Nick Brown, the director of marketing over there at SVS. So before we get into that, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your question answered on this podcast, which will happen after the new year, send us your email at question@avrant.com. You can go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there, facebook.com/avrantpodcast. YouTube.com/AVRant for the videos from our podcasts, including the recording sessions. They're raw for the most part, but there are some more finished versions, but our lips won't sync up because we're a country away from
even
each
this
other.
intro might not be synced up. And to give everyone the forewarning right now, this interview that we're doing today is audio only. So if you are watching the YouTube version of this, it's just a logo throughout the entire thing. We did not record any video for this. So not our normal video version, but hey, you get the
Skype
whole
was
audio
giving
experience.
us too many issues for us to attempt video. It was crashing on multiple computers. So once we got everything flowing, we're like, don't touch it.
Nope, don't put that in there and spend another 20 minutes trying to get that sorted out. We didn't have the time for that.
We did not have the time for that. So, like I said, we're gonna this is, if you're listening to this on the podcast, it went live on January 4th. We are on break right now over the holidays. I'm out of town, and Rob, he does have a life, people. I know it doesn't seem like it. He has family. He's got family. He's got to see him. You can't make him not see him. So, Rob is doing his thing. So, please send your questions. We will get to them after the new year. And this is our interview coming up here. Well, today we want to welcome Gary Yacoubian, CEO and president of SVS, the podcast, and probably the single most recommended brand that we do around here until they raise their prices, in which case then we'll see what happens after that. We also want to welcome Nick Brown, vice president of marketing.
You had to go negative on me already?
Already. Hey, I just want to make sure everybody out there that knows it's not because we love you, which we do.
It's conditional love. It's very conditional love.
It's because you love your listeners, which I get, actually.
That's right.
That's right. We get people who are like, how come you always recommend such and such a company? I'm like, well, when they stop making good products, we'll stop recommending them. Because that's what happened to Yamaha for 2 years. We didn't recommend Yamaha for 2 years because their receivers were before their Montage came out. But enough about that. Let's welcome Gary and Nick. So welcome Gary, welcome Nick.
Thank you. Really appreciate you guys having us on. Big fans.
Yeah, we love you guys, actually. And I actually, I know you want to talk about SVS, but I do understand what you're saying, and I think you're right that sometimes audio is so filled with snake oil and sentimental beliefs in this or that brand, and we're all about I think you are, and we try to be about bringing the best possible experiences we can, the best possible product experiences we can to people at prices that are within reach. That's our thing.
And the thing is, you guys keep doing it, and that's why we love your brand, and we love your subwoofers, and we love recommending you guys. It was funny. I was as I was preparing for this interview, I was flipping around your website. I'm like, oh, that's one of our listeners. It was on your page about is it
featured listener systems?
Systems. I'm like, oh, that's one of our listeners right there. And so it's funny to see sort of how people have taken to SVS and all the different things that you guys have done, because one of the things that you've done is you've really expanded out past just subwoofers, and you've done a lot more. But since Rob and I have, since the last time we've talked to you guys, I think the last time was it with the 16 Ultras? Was that the last
It
time
was
we
the
talked?
16 Ultras and or the 4000 series, which definitely there's a through line in the design of those subs. But we have definitely not talked to you in person since the 3000 series came out. And even though today we are definitely going to spend some time focusing on the brand new 2000 Pro series, that's what spurred on us having this interview today. But we want to go back a little bit in time and talk about that 3000 series because there's seems to us, at least by appearance, a very clear through line from 3000 to 2000 series. So maybe, Gary, you could start by talking a little bit about what brought about the 3000 series and the differences that are, visibly noticeable between the 4000 to the 3000.
Sure. Well, I think that you're exactly right that there's a direct line. And in fact, as we wrapped up 16 Ultra, we immediately moved on to 4000 series, and we wanted to apply what we learned about 16 in designing 16 Ultra to create 4000 series that wasn't just sort of benefiting from some spiritual halo from the 16 Ultra, but instead to really deploy the technology. We had a phenomenal driver in the 4000 series, but the amplifier in 16 Ultra was way beyond what we were using for the previous iteration, which was called 13 Ultra at the time. Mm-hmm. And but the 13-inch driver, which is deployed in 4000 series, very similar to the 13 Ultra driver. That thing is God's gift, but it's extremely, it's a very involved driver to build, and so therefore it kind of kept the price in that mid 1000s price range, which is, for what it does is phenomenal. But we wanted to see if we could start from scratch on a 13-inch driver that possibly could be at a more affordable price range. And we targeted $1,000, and we were able to get there. We constantly, there are some economies of scale with that amplifier. We're using the Analog Devices DSP chip. The amplifier is essentially the same platform, going from 16 Ultra to 4000 and now to 3000 and now to 2000 Pro series with different levels of power, but the same Analog Devices DSP chip, the same level of sophistication. So each time we bring these to a more affordable price range, it does create some economies of scale, which benefit we pass. I mean, look, I'm not trying to say we're trying to make the world safe for great audio, but we really kind of are in the sense that we're using these economies of scale to bring technologies to price ranges where they've never been. The driver, on the other hand, does not benefit from economies of scale. That 4000 series driver is essentially hand built, and it's got a super exotic voice coil, and there's just some things you can't figure out a way to do the same thing for a price that's within a more affordable price range. So we started from scratch on the 3000 series driver, but we still wanted to have a 13-inch driver. But we started from scratch on how we did it. Smith Freeman, our chief designer, who's here in Ohio with us today, probably should have involved him in this. He would have done a better job than I am. He developed some really cool technologies in order to basically bring a level of performance that was not possible in this price range to the, essentially the $1,000 price range. Mm-hmm. And, some of the things he did was he developed a very exotic, as opposed to exotic materials in the voice coil that our 16 Ultra and our 4000 series use. He developed a very exotic way of winding the voice coil, what he calls a split wind voice coil, which deploys the ability to move a ton of air, but also at the points of where normally you would be moving so much air that you would lose control. The voice coil actually, a different layer of voice coil takes control and basically exerts control on the driver. And the benefit there is that this is in some ways our fastest and most accurate driver. It's really quick, it's really accurate, yet it's capable of moving a ton of air. And we married it to that amplifier platform, a lower powered version of that amplifier platform, but the same Analog Devices DSP, which is super sophisticated and allows us to create a room response curve that is down to the granular level, basically lets the subwoofer load to the room. Mm-hmm. And that worked really, really well for us. I think personally, I think the SB3000 is almost a magic trick. It's a pretty small compact subwoofer. So it's not just in terms of what it does for the $1,000 price range, but also what it does in a very compact cabinet. It's just absolutely astonishing. And not only does it go very deep and play as loud as the person wants, but it's also very fast and musical and accurate. And so we're seeing that a lot in 2.1 systems, even at the very highest level of performance.
Now, just before we take that through line and go on to the new 2000 Pro series, just visually, if you're looking at the backs of the amplifiers so the 16 Ultra and the 4000 series, they look really similar from the outside, and the controls are placed on the front, and they come with a handheld remote that you can use, and of course you can use the app that you can load onto any smartphone to control things remotely that way via Bluetooth. But then when we go to the 3000 series, we see, okay, now the controls are on the back, and it doesn't come with a little handheld remote, but you've mentioned that it is based on the same DSP platform. So what was the decision there? Was that, I mean, I'm not sure how much it adds cost for that little handheld remote, because it still uses the app based on the same platform. So maybe a little bit about the visual and placement choices there.
So actually, primarily the reason that we did what we did on the 3000 series and 2000 Pro was it allows you to, I mean, if you look at the 4000 series, or you look at 16 Ultra, there's actually 3 vertical inches that you wouldn't need if you didn't have that display. So our assumption was that the person who is getting a 4000 series or a 16 Ultra is probably going to be putting it in a more dedicated system. It's probably going to be in a major home theater. And for that reason, that 3 vertical inches probably doesn't matter that much to them. But we, in the 3000 series and 2000 Pro, we wanted the versatility, and we're able to create the same experience, but the cabinet is more compact because of that. And also, I would say, learning what we learned from the 16 Ultra and 4000 series, I love the ability to control the main things on the back panel of the 3000 series. It's really a joyful interface, believe it or not, even though it's behind. And I think the other thing is that we developed a lot of confidence that people were going to use the app.
Right.
The app.
I figured as much.
When we started with the app, we were like, who's going to use this? But it's so much fun to use, and you could stay, if you want to, you can just stay on the homepage of the app and not do anything too granular, or if you want to go deep, you can. What we find is virtually all our customers do install the app and enjoy using the app. And the app is, as you said, Bluetooth connected, but it's also bi-directional, meaning there's visual confirmation of everything you did. And one thing, I could be wrong about this, but I think once you've set up your subwoofer, you don't really need to look at the front panel. You're listening, you're enjoying. You don't really need to open up the app and see what's going on. You just enjoy it. You might revisit your settings in between programming, but you wouldn't necessarily need to be watching what's going on the subwoofer in real time.
Right. Yeah.
So that was kind of the thinking there.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we find is that when you're setting up, what you want is that granular control when you are setting up your subwoofer in your home theater, and being able to do it from your seat rather than having to run back and forth. Right. As you're looking at your SPL meter or whatever, or if you're using Odyssey or something along those lines, where it's telling you, oh, you need to turn it 3 dB louder. It's nice to be able to do that from where you're standing, but once you're done with that, you don't really need to touch it again. It is nice to be able to know, though, that you can go back into the app and say, I had it set at this, and then somebody has changed something on the back of my somebody's changed something on the back of the cleaning lady or something, or the kids. You're like, wait a second, the sub's way too loud. Luckily I have my settings saved, or I wrote them down someplace, and I can just grab the app and make all the changes I need to make, and it's good to go.
That's true. I mean, and look, here's one positive. As you guys, I think, know, we're talking to our customers all the time. We're talking to them by phone, by chat, by email. Sorry, I'm fighting a cold here.
Yes.
And I'm meeting them face to face in consumer events. We're trying to do at least one a week. We just did one in Portland last week, and we get feedback about what they like and what they don't like in terms of the user interface, probably more than anything else. And I almost universally get positive feedback about the app. I also almost universally get like, oh, we don't really do much controlling from the front panel, and we don't really use that credit card remote that much because it's something extra to keep around. I think the general consensus is they don't use it that much.
Makes sense.
Makes sense to me too. So then we move on to the 2000 Pro series, which is the brand new hotness that just came out. That amplifier looks very similar to the other one. So, like you said, you seem to be, that economy of scale, and we definitely appreciate that. We see that a lot of brands will do that. They'll put out the flagship, speaker, and then that technology slowly trickles down to their other lines as they refresh their lines as they go on. Definitely makes that technology a lot easier to get into these lower price points. So we do appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about the Pro series, the 2000 Pro series, and the advantages it has for the consumers, and maybe some of the differences between it and the old 2000 line.
So the way I've been saying this recently, and I'll say it briefly, is I went to CEDIA earlier this year, as you probably did as well, and many people do. It's this big industry event, and we all go, and everybody's announcing lots of new products, especially in the audio and custom installation space. And I'm looking at all these new audio product speakers and other things, and I'm thinking to myself, it just looks like another version of last year's model. It's got this or that little twist to it. And we really we're uncomfortable with that. It just, it feels like almost, I don't know. I don't want to be judgmental of other companies, but it feels like almost a fake new product introduction. So we really wanted to underscore that 2000 Pro is a dramatic departure from 2000, which is why we called it Pro. This is not marketing. I really felt, I guess it's marketing in a sense, but I really felt that as a team, we wanted to highlight the fact that this is totally different from the 2000 series. The only similarity is that they're very similarly priced. Right. Other than that, it's a complete reimagining of what's possible in that price range. It's a totally new driver that's capable of more output and more control. But I think the big change is the fact that the amplifier that we had before was excellent for what it was in that price range. But this amplifier, with the same DSP, same app control, the same full array of control and quality at that price range is pretty amazing. We're talking about a digital front end with a fully discrete MOSFET output at that price range. Right. We're talking about analog devices, 50 megahertz DSP, which, when we did it in 16 Ultra, it had never been seen in a subwoofer. Now, how about a subwoofer that's, in the upper three figures? Come on. Yeah. It's just pretty unprecedented. It really does bring a level of performance and sophistication that's not been seen anywhere near that price. And I would also point out, we don't talk about this that much, that amplifier is extremely low distortion.
Yes.
And it's way lower distortion than the predecessor.
And low noise floor.
Amplifier.
You can press your ear right against it and you don't hear even like the slightest hum, which is amazing, really.
Yeah. It's just not normal anywhere near that price range. And I'm extremely proud of the fact that we were able to get that level of technology to that price range.
It's
pretty cool.
Down from started with the flagship and definitely can see how that came down in the series. And one thing that you touched on the last time we talked to you, which was much too long ago, but you were mentioning how it
was it something I said?
This is a good thing, but something I'm curious about, particularly with this 2000 Pro series, because you talked about how it isn't just you upgrade a driver and leave everything else the same. You upgrade an amplifier and leave everything else the same. It's a combination of all the components of the sub can be more than just the sum of its parts. And one thing that I was a little bit surprised about is with this new 2000 Pro series, it's totally new cabinets as well, and also totally new port design. It wasn't as though you just took the existing 2000 series cabinets and port design and put new driver and amplifier in there. It's like, it's all new, the cabinets and the ports. And if you could touch upon just how gigantic the port of the cylinder is, because we noticed that just visually, that thing is
That's
huge.
the first thing I saw. I was like, oh my God, that's the world's biggest port. That's like, you get your kid's hand stuck in there. That'll be great.
Or your cat.
That's right.
It's well, you know, you're exact. First of all, as I always say this, a subwoofer is an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem of cabinet design, driver design, and build, and obviously, and amplifier and design and amplifier execution. So all those things need to work together. And what we discovered when we started modeling that amplifier with that driver, or what we thought it was going to be, we started to realize that the single port of the old 2000 series was not going to be sufficient for the amount of output that was possible here. And we didn't want to leave any stone unturned. And look, I want to tell people, a port is not just a hole. It is. That would make it sound like it's almost cheaper to have more ports than less. It's actually, the port is actually a relatively expensive thing to add. To have two ports like that with the corresponding port tubes and the kinds of things you need to do actually does add cost to the design. But it was worth it because, as you point out, you don't want to. There's a lot of subwoofer is supposed to make things that you can hear, and a lot of things that there's a lot of things that you shouldn't hear with a subwoofer. You talked about noise floor. I would also say you don't want to have any sound above the non-directionality of bass, because then when you start localizing where the sound is coming from, you lose that convincing quality.
Yeah, it'd be harmonic,
and you don't want to hear
supposed to be there. Yeah,
100%. And you don't want to hear port noise.
Yeah.
And port noise is very possible when you have a high output subwoofer like the 2000 Pro. So that's why we went with the dual port design, and it made a big difference. We could not do dual port on the cylinder because of the nature of the cylinder design. So you're right, we made a massive port on the back of there because we didn't want to have port noise.
And can I just say how exceedingly happy we were that there is still a cylinder in the 2000 Pro series. We got a little bit worried when the 3000 series came out and there was no more cylinder. There used to be a 12 plus cylinder, the 12 plus being the series that the 3000 series replaced. And we thought, oh no, does this mean cylinders are going away entirely? So we're very happy there's a 2000 Pro cylinder PC.
I think the SVS community would have been on my doorstep with pitchforks and torches if we had discontinued cylinders. They are definitely a certain type of person, a certain kind of a audiophile or subwoofer lover chooses cylinders, and I think we're the only ones making cylinders anymore.
It
so
sure
if we
looks that
stopped,
way.
there wouldn't be any. So we definitely we're on the program to stay with.
Nice.
So Nick, maybe we can bring you in on this a little bit, because as you know, the vice president of marketing, Gary is a fantastic advocate for the brand. One of the things that we hear from our listeners, especially the ones that end up at trade shows or listening conventions or listening, events where they run into Gary, is how great he is to talk to, and he's a great advocate for the brand. But as the vice president of marketing, you're I would suppose that your job is to take all of these things that Gary is saying and make them as widely available and widely known as possible. What are some of the challenges and some of the ways that you're overcoming those challenges with this 2000 Pro series and getting the information out there about what the differences are and how important they are?
Well, I think, it's everything's true what you said. Gary's super approachable, and I think that sort of trickles down to our brand. Everything we try to do is very much, out there for the public to see, and we also try to engage our, people in the SVS community through social, and then be very proactive in, getting the word out to all of the reviewers and the media out there who have some of the more technical questions. We try to give as much detail on our website as possible, like comparison tools, things that make it very easy to not only look at how, the specs different from one product to the next, but also to make visual comparisons, and then also educating our support team, which, I think, as you probably know in talking to some of our owners, our support team is fantastic, and they will answer any sort of technical questions. They're always trying to just get, the best product for each individual, never trying to upsell anything like that. So I think there's an educational component to how we, that sort of runs throughout our entire company that really sort of just focuses on getting the best product for each individual and whatever scenario they have, whether it's a room challenge or whether it's a certain type of gear they have. So we just try to make that readily available, that information. And, again, we're very active in reaching out to the press and letting reviewers help tell that story too, because it's one thing for us to say it, but to get the products out there in the hands of critics and people who, are looking at other, competitors' products, that's where people can get a real perspective on what exactly differentiates our products, but also, reviewers who have looked at the 2000, the 3000, the 4000 and had that progression, they can make some insightful comments in that regard too.
Well, go ahead.
What kind of, market research, and how much does that inform Gary and his team as far as putting together new products in the future? Are you working with them to reach out to customers and say, hey, you really like this, is there any what would you like improved, that sort of thing, or is it more of an in-house evolution of products?
See, it's funny. That can be a dangerous game because if we listen totally to our customers,
do not listen to the customers. Let me start with that.
We probably have a 36-inch double driver subwoofer that we'd be rolling out this month.
Yep, you would.
So
double was not enough. You need quads.
So there's like a certain class where you certainly want to play into the passion. You want to listen to everything you have. But like Gary was saying, we go to these events and we speak one-to-one with people who have owned our products for years and follow the progression. And when they give us feedback, that's stuff we can take to the bank, I believe.
One of my kids was telling me the other day, he's like, Dad, what are you doing right now? It's like 8:00 at night and I'm answering emails from customers. And I think we talk to our customers probably as much as any company on the planet. We talk to them face to face. And, I do want to correct one thing that was said, which is, it's not just me out there sharing our passion for great sound. I think Nick is with me all the time. Larry Magoo is with me. Ed Mullen, who you guys know. People I think are shocked that a company president is out there meeting people and talking about it, but I think we all do it. And I do think we don't even need to do that sort of survey type of market research because we're constantly talking to our customers and we're constantly making sure what we do resonates with them.
Right.
And it's so funny because we do these events. He mentioned Portland. We had other one, like 3 in Texas and another one in Nebraska over the course of these last 2 months. And people come up to Gary and ask him to sign their speakers. So nobody has asked me to do that yet. But that's a level of stardom that I can only aspire to. And
brother. You understand he's throwing grapefruits at me right now.
That is not true, Gary. I have seen you sign speakers and T-shirts before, so don't act like it doesn't happen.
I would tell you, I'll have you sign my arm if I ever meet you in person. I'll get it tattooed.
We'll tattoo it.
Well, as much as we've talked about and praised the face-to-face interaction or being able to chat either via text or on the phone, and that I think fair to say the majority of people still do their research sortively on the sly. They'll come to your website. They're not necessarily expecting to or wanting to talk to anybody in person. And I wanted to mention, I noticed, new website design that's pretty recent, just came out within the past week. I'm actually a fan of the new navigation. I think it makes looking through all the available products that SVS offers is simpler. It's easier to see the whole lineup. It's just subwoofers, speakers, you hover your mouse over it, and there is everything in one very clean interface. So what is sort of the progression of that website design? SVS has gone through many website designs, but is that all in response to how people are using it, or is it stuff you do talk about in person? The new website design, if you could say a few words about that. Maybe, Nick, we can get you talking again.
Sure, absolutely. No, that was a project that we knew, it was a big project for us, obviously, having a lot of focus on e-commerce and making sure people can navigate it and find out the information they want to readily without any frustration points. But I think it's also about, letting the passion that we have for our products, but then also the passion that our owners have come through, as well as some of the, the critical acclaim. There's sort of this total package of what a great website should do, and it should instill confidence. So that was a big part of it. But really, when it gets down to it, you want people to be able to find exactly what they need as quickly as they need. So I think that was really the impetus for the design and sort of the approach we took. but then layering on those extra parts that I was mentioning about, getting some user-generated images on there that can show real people's systems, actually how they're using our products. But then, at stoking the passion by having the featured systems and the owner's gallery and all these different things that, again, just sort of take it to that level of this isn't just, polished lifestyle photography that they took in a studio. They're really trying to embrace their owners. So I think it's as much as creating a resource that helps people make the right decision as much as it is stoking that passion. And so I'm really happy to hear you guys give your stamp of approval versus the previous version, because it was a lot of work, but we're super happy with how
it was only a year late.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention that, but hey, perfection doesn't always take,
I'll just say it's fewer button clicks, and fewer button clicks is always good. So that's
that's the Cribs note version of what I just said. Yeah.
I haven't been on your website in forever because I don't have much reason to go, but I went today to prepare for this, or not today, but in general, I've been in the last week or so going through it, and I noticed that it was that these drop downs made it super easy. So I agree with Rob. Now going back to Gary, one of the things, the first things I noticed when I saw the pictures of the new 2000 Pro series was that the basket on the driver seems to be stamped rather than cast, which is probably the first time I've seen you guys use a stamped basket. Now it looks like a super heavy duty stamped basket, but it's not cast, and that's a first for you. I know there's going to be a reviewer who's going to talk about it. I know that's the first thing they're going to say when they open up your cabinet. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So I can say this much, every design decision we make is to put the customer first. But what does put the customer first really mean? Does it mean that you create a situation where there's cost no object? Here's the thing about stamped versus cast, and a lot of people don't know this. We normally use cast baskets, and we've used almost exclusively cast baskets in the past, but only because guys like you talk about that.
I know.
And the reality is there is literally, if you design it correctly,
right,
there is literally not a small amount. There is zero performance difference between that basket and the previous one. Zero, none, not even. I'm not even going to say a little. Now, part of this is how you do it, how you build it, and how you design it, how you design the overall experience. But that driver, we went from a cast to a stamp, but that driver is way better than the previous driver, and we were able to keep the product in the same price range as it was, and to me that's a victory. So that's really my main point here. I and this is going to be a very, I don't know, CEO-like thing to say, so please don't shoot me. We didn't do it out of corporate greed. We did it to bring the most value to our customers. We're the last thing from corporate greed, as my partners constantly remind me angrily. I mean, we're constantly trying to bring the most extreme value we possibly can to our customers, and we do it every way we can, other than compromising the experience.
Well, I think it's important to get that note out there. I mean, that's something that our podcast can actually shine a light on that might not necessarily get said elsewhere very often, is how, people will just see that word stamped. And I think it is fair to say we have seen a lot of super cheap, super thin, super flimsy stamped baskets on drivers. And we're not talking about subwoofers necessarily, but that is out there. And unfortunately, that gets associated in people's minds where it's correlation, not causation in this case, right? Where, they've seen a lot of super cheap, super flimsy, and those are stamped. That must mean stamped is always bad. That doesn't have to be the case, right? So,
well, look, the point of this is the basket rigid?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Does it preserve the inertness of the parts of the subwoofer that are not supposed to be moving? That's that simple. Does it flex? Is it rigid? Is it inert? Yes. That's the reality of that product.
There's too much short, especially in reviewers, and then the more inexperienced the reviewer is, or the more lazy the reviewer is, the more often they are to just use some shorthand, so that they feel like they have to have a couple of things to say that's a little bit on one side so that they can say the stuff on the other side. It's like they don't want to be gushing, and they'll like, okay, well, the basket was stamped, and therefore
it'll go in the cons section, whether it matters.
That
or
will
not,
go
right?
in the cons, whether it makes any difference or not. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up, because we often on our podcast have people come up to us and say, which is better, a soft dome tweeter or a folded ribbon? And Rob and I will look at each other and go, I don't know. Who designed it? Which speaker is it in? Who manufactured it? What's those design specs? Everything else. So when
and how you designed it into the speaker.
Yes,
exactly.
Some of all
that's
parts
critical.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. So I wanted to address this more than anything because I knew when I looked at that basket, I was like, it's stamped. But holy moly, there's a lot of metal on that thing.
Well, I mean, all you got to do, if you're going to look at it in reality, take it out, hold it, see how rigid it is. I mean, there's I make no apologies because it is super rigid, super inert. It doesn't flex. It does a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
The driver is a phenomenal driver. It works really, really well. A lot of the things we do, I don't think we get. We don't talk about it that much, but the way we validate a driver is a torture test that I'm pretty sure nobody does. We'll run it at 80% power for 4 days straight. We'll do a 24-hour on and off to full power. Things that are just absolutely outrageous to make absolutely sure that this, and then we measure it to make sure nothing has changed in the performance of the driver. These are things that I don't think everybody does. We don't make any design decision that results in lower performance, but we might make a design decision that allows us to bring more value to the end user.
Well, one other thing that I have seen, I would say quite recently in some video reviews, or even just maybe not reviews, but videos about SVS subwoofers, or specifically in comparison to other brand subwoofers. And it's one of these things where you've talked about the DSP control, you've talked about how robust the drivers and the amplifiers are, but part of that DSP control that we know that SVS uses is to create very linear response. If you take this sub outside to a wide open field and measure it ground plane, it's nearly a flat line all the way up until the amplifier runs out of power, basically. But what some people have pointed...
Funny you say that. Are you saying that a subwoofer is not a tractor that needs to win a tractor pull, but a subwoofer is actually a device designed to reproduce audio faithfully and convincingly?
We
Strange.
like that. We think
possible?
if the signal is playing all of these sounds at the same volume, having them all come out at the same volume is a good thing. But I've seen people who have pointed out, there are some other subwoofers that do not have DSP control or a servo or something else to sort of keep it in line, and you can keep turning up the gain on either the signal or the amplifier side, and you will see that at some frequency it got a little bit louder. Everything else got the same or quieter because it started distorting like crazy, but one frequency got a little bit louder, and they will then proclaim, well, this sub can get louder than SVS's similarly priced sub. Sure, it's only at this one frequency and the distortion's gone up to 20%, but it got louder. So
right. So I one of the design philosophies that I really wanted, I've been in audio my whole life and trying to create great sound in different ways. And one of the things I said when I first came on board to SVS, which has now been 8.5 years, was we're not going to create products designed to quote unquote, I'm kidding when I say this, but I mean it. We're not out there trying to win a tractor pull. We're out there trying to create the absolute best audio sound experience we possibly can in our price range. And that means, and I don't want to, this will take this podcast too far in, but we define subwoofer performance 5 different ways. I think I've said this to you guys in the past. It's not just how loud it plays or even how deep it goes, although those are 2 of the ways. It's also accurate frequency response, speed and transients, and the ability to seamlessly integrate with the full range speakers. Because we're not trying to, we're trying to create a convincing total experience. And there's more to it than just how loud the subwoofer plays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
We
now
100% agree.
maybe the obvious question. I don't think you'll be shocked, but we've okay. PB16 Ultra got all the new app features, the new app design, went down to 4,000, came down to 3,000. Now it's down to 2,000 Pro Series. Would we be insane to think that there might be a 1,000 Pro Series possibly?
We're doing that as we speak now, trying to see if that is possible. We certainly will refresh the 1000 series. Will we be able to bring all that level of technology? I don't know yet. But I promise you this: we're going to take no prisoners to provide a better experience than we have in the past with each new range. We're never, I'll make this promise: we are never going to just reskin something and say it's the new model. We're going to have there's some reason why it's going to exist that is an upgrade for the end user.
Okay.
All right, there it is.
We thought you were gonna stonewall us on that one, so now you've taken the spot. You're putting us on our heels here. All right.
Well,
so
Nick was saying it too, and I'm going to say, I agree with Nick. I mean, basically, what we tried to do in the website is make all the information as transparently available as possible to people, and we're a very transparent company. You can turn us inside out. You're not going to be surprised at anything you see.
So one of the things we haven't talked to you about, and that has come out since the last time we talked, was the Prime Pinnacle speakers, which of course are the floor standing speakers. They're is it like $800? Is the pair or each? That would be each. Yeah. Each, yeah, $800 each. Tell us a little bit about those and some of the design decisions you guys made and what you're trying to do with those speakers.
Well, first of all, we kept being asked by people, are you going to make a larger tower that is maybe a little easier to place than the Ultra Tower, which is a phenomenal speaker, but Ultra Tower needs air around it, and it's got a design that most people love, but not everyone. It's definitely a design where you look at it and you see it, and it's making a visual statement. And so we got a lot of feedback. This would be a great example of talking to our customers. Hey, is there a way you could do a larger tower than the Prime Tower that's also easy to place as opposed to the Ultra Tower? And which the Ultra Tower sounds great up against a wall, but not nearly as good as it could sound when it's pulled out from the wall and it has air around it. So this was an easy project, so we thought. And Smith and I modeled it, and I'm like, we should have this in a matter of months, right? We already know and it actually took almost 2 years. It was we had 4 completely different prototype designs before we settled on what we ended up with. And the good news is this product is by far our most recognized speaker. I'm not going to name other audiophile sites, but
we wouldn't mind if you did.
Okay. I mean, we got named as by AVS Forum as one of the best speakers so far this year. And in fact, I think we were the only tower on the list. And then we started winning other awards. We won Sound and Vision Top Pick. What am I missing, Nick? This speaker is by far the most awarded speaker we've gotten. It gets reviews all over, and it's been embraced all over the world, especially, which is really gratifying because there are certain countries where they only like their own stuff, like UK and Germany. And it's been embraced in places like that. So it was a painstaking project, but it really taught me a lot about what's possible in passive full range speakers, and it's helped our entire. Speakers are actually the fastest growing part of what SVS does, so that's super gratifying. Yeah.
Well, interestingly, I'm going to flip a little bit on that because one of the things I've seen when we talked about, wanting to make sure everything is as clear as possible and that consumers know exactly what they're getting and why they're getting it at the price they're getting it, and that's explained on the website. But I've seen a little bit of confusion now and then about the Prime Pinnacle because it does fall in between price-wise and size-wise, the original Prime Tower and the Ultra Tower. And then we're seeing it named Prime, but it's got some of the materials, particularly in the mid-range driver, that appear to be borrowed from the Ultra series. And I've certainly had people ask me directly, which center do I get to go with the Prime Pinnacle if I'm using my Prime Pinnacle towers as front, left, rights in a 5.1 setup? Do I get the Prime Center to go with that or the Ultra Center to go with that? So there's a little bit of confusion there that maybe you can clear up for us right now.
So there's definitely confusion, and I get asked that question all the time. And there's a few things going on here. So let me answer. I think I heard actually 3 different questions.
That's right.
So I'm going to answer them best I can. First question is, what is Prime Pinnacle? Is it better than what is it? It's very similarly priced to the Ultra Tower. Which one's better? I get asked that question all the time, and I'm going to tell you, if you ask Smith which one's better, he's going to say Prime Pinnacle, better than the Ultra Tower. I actually think it's a question of what you like and your placement.
And a bit of form factor there, what works better for you.
Exactly. So but I will say, if you like a big kind of more flamboyant soundstage, a big soundstage, and you have the space, you can leave some air around the speaker, then Ultra Tower is a very good first choice. But Prime Pinnacle is just as high fidelity as Ultra Tower. So then it becomes a matter of personal preference, and if by some chance you're in a situation where the product needs to be shoved against a wall or have stuff on either side of it, then I would recommend Prime Pinnacle over Ultra Tower.
Okay.
So that's your first question. Second question, if that's true, then what would you mix? How would you mix and match Prime Pinnacle with other parts of a home theater in a home theater situation? So the really short answer to that is that we worked really, really hard to carefully voice the entire Prime series so that it can match the entire Ultra series. All our speakers are voiced that they could work in the same home theater together. So the choice would be, do I want the added, the Ultra Center has a bigger sound and a slightly higher level of fidelity because it's a slightly larger speaker, right, and with slightly more capable drivers, or for essentially half the price, you can have Ultra Center, which is a true 3-way center at $350, which is a pretty nice deal and sounds phenomenal. Very similar crossover design to the Ultra Center. They are both voiced very similarly. Typically, we have multiple steps in voicing. We voice to reference, and then we voice to other products in the range, and then we voice to other products in other ranges, meaning the Ultra series to the Prime series and vice versa. And the reason we do that is we don't want people to have that confusion. Unfortunately, it seemed to have created more confusion because people expect the 2 series to sound different. Yes. So I just kind of answer it that way.
Maybe I can ask directly, which tweeter does the Prime Pinnacle use? Is it the Prime series tweeter or the Ultra series tweeter?
I mean, the real answer to that is kind of yes. I mean, and the reason I say that is because they both have the same diaphragm. There's a lot of similarities between those 2 tweeters, which is one reason why the voicing is so similar. They're very similar.
Okay.
So, but I mean, the true answer to that question is it's the Prime series tweeter. Okay. But they're very, very similar to the Ultra series tweeter.
So since you've said that the 1000 series, you guys are looking at that, but somebody's getting the call. Said that your speaker, that's okay. The speaker is one of the biggest growing portions of your market. I mean, do you have any ideas of what? I'm sure you do, but do you have anything you're willing to share with us as far as in walls, maybe in ceilings, integrated backer boxes for other speakers or your speakers forthcoming? Anything?
Piggybacking on that, I'll just say, if you ever did an in-wall, please have backer boxes for them. That would make it so much easier for us to recommend.
The problem with in-wall speakers in general and in-ceiling speakers in general is it's a market that's not dominated by performance. It's dominated by an integrator making a recommendation to a rich guy who doesn't have time to do any due diligence. So it doesn't favor a brand like SVS that's all about just bringing awesome performance to the end user. I'll tell you though, there is a category where I think awesome performance would be rewarded, and we're working very feverishly on that. So I'll give you one little tease.
All right.
You would expect an in-wall subwoofer from SVS to totally kick rear, and we're working very feverishly to have that. So we will not release it until it's a real SVS subwoofer experience, but that's something we are working on, which I'm willing to share.
And please, nobody go expecting this to show up next week. That is not what is happening.
Not the case.
Not next week.
No, that is not the case. Just to put it in your ear, though, in case it noodles around inside your mind, what you said about in-walls, we couldn't agree more. But what if some company out there, like an SVS, were to change that and actually give us some performance-based, affordable, not overpriced, not we just took car audio speakers and threw them into a hole in the wall. If somebody were to change that, that might get a lot of talk on our podcast, for example.
Well, I appreciate that. And by the way, two of our most important designers both have worked extensively in the integration space, both of them. So they're two of our top designers, Mitch Witten and Smith Freeman. Both have extensive experience in that space. They can do great things there. I just want to make sure that if you make a great product, it's going to be appreciated out in the marketplace. So, it seems to me that it's driven by something else right now.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with you as far as the in-wall in ceiling. I mean, the only reason that, a lot of people are asking us about in ceilings right now is because of Atmos, and because of your elevation speakers, we often recommend those, especially when people don't want to put holes in their ceilings or in their walls. It becomes a very easy solution for them. But we do get a lot of.
But you can see it.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Yes.
Go ahead. That's the problem. But I tell you what, I mean, that Prime Elevation is our number one selling speaker. And I guarantee you it's being matched up with a lot of other brands besides SVS, because otherwise it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense.
We've seen quite a few wedge-shaped speakers come out since the Prime Elevation came out. So it seems
Isn't
like
that
you hit on
interesting?
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, it's weird how you guys were all designing the same thing at the same time, but they came out a year and a half later. Weird.
Yeah. Surprising.
So, go ahead, Rob.
Oh, okay.
I can see you guys
well, I think maybe yours would work better. You wanted to ask about something maybe beyond Ultra, because mine goes into a different category coming up next. My next question.
Right. So, yes, for my own personal edification or interest, I would like to know if you guys are looking towards, an even higher end bookshelf or tower speaker. Personally, I would love to see something beyond the Ultra in the bookshelf format. Something that competes at the, $1,500, $2,000 a pair, or maybe even each price point. A lot of people are working that price point is getting higher and higher, hotter and hotter in our podcast. People who are already bought your Prime speakers and now like, I want to get an upgrade. Well, you can go to the Ultra, but I don't want to spend more money than that. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about something else. Is that on your radar? Is that something you guys are thinking about, or is that a space you're not interested in right now?
Well, I think the short answer is that we're all about trying to bring really awesome experiences to as many people as possible, and trying to do it in price ranges that are within reach of a normal person if we can ignite their passion. Mm-hmm. So we targeted, we felt we could create a really good experience with Ultra speakers in the price ranges they're in. I will say this, we're always working to top ourselves, not necessarily in terms of price, like going higher in price, but always trying to challenge what's possible in the price ranges we're in. So without telegraphing too much, I would say that we're working very hard on every series that we're in to try to improve the performance that is possible. In the journey of doing that, maybe we'll stumble on some technologies that are not within those price ranges, but are well worth bringing out. And at that point, then I wouldn't rule it out. But remember, we are inclusive. We're not elitist. We think that's part of our DNA, to keep pushing ourselves to do more in the price ranges we're in. There's more work to be done there right now. We know we can do better, and we're going to keep challenging ourselves to do that.
Well, that leads right in, because I was just about to say SVS clearly not a company that rests on its laurels. If it were, then the 2000 series wouldn't have been upgraded, because that was a really high selling series of subwoofers that didn't necessarily need to be upgraded. But you're not resting on your laurels. And so one of the other products we haven't touched on yet, but I'd like to give it a mention, the Prime Wireless series of products, particularly the actual speakers themselves, which which graciously I was able to get a pair of those for myself. My parents are using them and enjoying them a lot. And what I love about them is that I can crank those things up. They've got a little bit of hearing loss, and I'm not worried about distortion happening with those Prime Wireless speakers, which can't always be said for speakers of that price and size. But in the interest of not resting on laurels, one of the things that they do not have is an infrared remote that comes with them. So if someone is trying to use them like in place of a sound bar or just alongside a television, the way to control the volume on them, from your seat is through the app. And not everybody wants to pull out a smartphone app. But along those lines, it is connected to Wi-Fi. And that's something a Harmony Hub could do, is control them through Wi-Fi if all of the software were in there. So it's my own personal question, but I've had other people ask because they're saying, can I use these in place of a soundbar? So the remote volume control of those Prime Wireless, any update or a version 2 that would address that?
Nothing I can tell you about right now, but I've definitely learned a lot from launching Prime Wireless about how people use these products. It's been a really successful entry into the market for us. I mean, we didn't know what to expect. I mean, it wasn't just a question of bringing the best product to market we could, but also changing the conversation about who we are. And I'm really gratified at the reception they've gotten. They've also won a lot of awards, which is really cool.
They sound good. That's a major thing in wireless speakers. They actually sound good.
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of that space is predicated on a belief that nobody cares about great sound.
Seems to be.
We obviously don't believe that. So I think the coy answer is we're going to address every user feedback we've gotten about Prime Wireless, and that's certainly been one feedback we've gotten.
Right.
Yes.
So there was Black Friday. You guys have traditionally had a Black Friday sale.
Our McRib. We have a McRib.
It keeps coming back.
It's not coming back again. That's it.
Are you guys finally out of them? That's the so it's
no. That's not true. They're freshly manufactured. We did manufacture them. We manufacture them every year. Those are not old products.
Okay.
However,
all right.
Yeah,
So is it the 12 NSDs? Is that what they are? Yeah.
That's
okay.
Right. And we manufactured them. They're fresh built, but we won't do the NSD promo.
I see.
Except
there was a previous 2000 series that just got replaced. So,
right,
scratching
something
my chin
could
here.
happen. Something could happen.
Not jump to conclusions quite yet.
Not put words in anybody's mouth.
We're having a retirement party for the 12 NSDs, though. Their retirement party has officially started.
We were, because of course we don't know. We just kept thinking that somebody found another case of cabinets in the back and went, oh, here we go.
No. They were 100% built up from scratch. I promise you. The only thing I will say we had to stockpile DSP chips for that. I mean, we did stockpile thousands and thousands of DSP chips when we knew we were going to do that for the last couple of years. But we won't do it again.
We had so many listeners call us up and say, "Oh my God, the NSDs are back out." I'm like, "Oh,
it's our McRib."
Yeah, it's the McRib, exactly. So, I guess I don't know if this is going to be the last question, but my last question is, once again, I mean, we address this I think every time we've talked to you, Gary, and I'm sure Nick can weigh in this as well. But one of the things that a lot of in-store manufacturers are afraid to do is go online, and a lot of things that online manufacturers are afraid to do is go to in stores. You guys have done that. You've done both. You're online and you're in stores. It's been years now. I mean, 2-3 years since you guys have rolled that out. How's that working out? How are you finding that marriage?
It's nice to control every aspect of the customer experience, which when you have partners, you don't. But on the other hand, our vision for ourselves has always been any way that anybody wants to engage us, we want to let them, and so we have some phenomenal partners. We have Crutchfield, we have Music Direct, who you probably know those guys, and they're the MoFi guys, and we have just top. We're in Magnolia Design Centers and Best Buy, and it's really gratifying because somebody who might not have been exposed to our brand at all because they don't, necessarily traverse the audiophile websites or read the magazines, they're getting exposed to it, and one thing I have found is the people who work in these stores, they're very often extremely passionate about great sound. That's why they do this. They love it. A lot of them are frustrated musicians, or they just care about this. And they love the fact that, you know, we're kind of coming at the world in a different way than some of the more conventional speaker brands that they work with. And so they embrace it, and they're passionate, and they're really good ambassadors for us. So, I mean, there's always a wrinkle, but you know, we talk that part of our business grows as fast as our direct business. It's doing really, really well.
That's fantastic. That's good to hear. Like I said, a lot of manufacturers are afraid to cross over from one side to the other for fear of what it's going to do to their other business model, their original business model. And it's very nice to hear that you can do it successfully as you guys have.
Well, one thing if I were going to give one business philosophy that I believe, don't make any decisions based on fear, because fear doesn't work.
Yeah, that's good advice. My last question for you. This is completely outside of products, although it is, I guess, still related to SVS as a business. But Gary, I've noticed you are active on Twitter. Follow you on Twitter there, and you have not been shy about tweeting or retweeting about there are challenges that you are facing as fair to still call you a small company. I mean, you're not Samsung. You're not that type of a size of an international company, although SVS is international. And you know, you've tweeted and retweeted about there are challenges that you are facing. Is there anything that you'd like to share on that front? Hopefulness for the future, or things that are, you know, presently challenging SVS as far as facing that international market and international trade?
You know, I have to say that I'm very active in our industry. I'm active in the Consumer Technology Association. Those are the people that put on CES. I'm on their audio division board. I'm the incoming chairman of that, and I'm also on the CTA executive board. And I get involved. And all I want is to make technology and innovation for me, my world, great audio products available to people without hindrance. That's it. You know, it's that simple. You know, we're in a great place right now. So I have no complaints other than I'm going to be in the conversation, and I'm going to be at the table. We are an American company. All our employees except 4 are American. Since I came on board, we have 10 times the number of American employees that we had. And we're all about, you know, creating success for our customers and our employees. That's it. You know, that's kind of what we do. And I try to keep my seat at the table to try to make sure that the world is one that's welcoming of that.
All right, good to hear.
I hope that answers
absolutely. That's absolutely good.
You know, I think I can speak for our listeners in particular, but, you know, I was ribbing you a little bit at the very beginning there about pricing and stuff like that. And your model is something that of bringing the best performance you can to the masses is something that we really appreciate as a podcast. We are constantly getting questions from people trying to maximize their audio dollars and get the best bang for their buck. And it's nice to be able to have companies out there, you know, specifically yours, that we can say, hey, this is an easy go-to, you know, company that you know that when you spend money there, your money is getting you the best audio that you can. And if you spend more money there, you know you're getting an improvement on the sound that you were getting, either through subwoofers, meaning that you can fill a bigger room, or in speakers, you know, getting, you know, slightly better performance as you go up in price. So, you know, we really appreciate your design philosophy, and we're very happy that you're sticking to it after all these years. You know, we've seen so many audio companies that, you know, once they get their following and their people and their little sycophants that online that tell them how great they are, all of a sudden
they start trying to cash the check.
Yep.
It's exactly what it is. All of a sudden it's the same speaker that they've been building for 10 years, but now it's 4 times the price. I'm like, you guys haven't spent, you can call it version 5. It's the same.
Or there's
tweeter,
a bunch of Me Too product. If I start seeing some active noise canceling look like they just came out of Shenzhen SVS headphones, I'm gonna worry. So yeah.
Never gonna happen. No, we always remind ourselves, we're all together in Ohio right now, and we always remind ourselves that we're still a work in progress. We stay hungry, and we keep trying to bring I guess, disruption and excitement to a marketplace that sometimes gets dominated by complacency and a belief that people don't care about great sound, and that's not what we're about. But I appreciate the acknowledgement, and I have to say, if it weren't for guys like you, there would be not enough passion for great sound. There would be no one to talk to, frankly, about that. So I'm very thankful for your passion about great sound, and we'll be involved in your podcast anytime you want us involved.
Awesome.
Well, this is our 12th year doing it, so
great. You do a great job.
Got no plans on stopping anytime soon. So we're very happy that you guys come on again. Nick, thank you very much for sharing your insights, and of course, Gary, it's great to have you back, and we can't wait to talk to you again.
Same here. Thanks, guys.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys. We'll be listening.
Great.
And that was Gary and Nick. We didn't mention it, but of course you can email both of them. The email will be in the show notes there for each of those people, Nick and Gary. You can email them directly. As Gary said, he does respond to emails directly.
Yep.
People are always surprised. They're like, oh, yeah, sure he does. No, the dude really does. He is like super personable. So, don't be afraid to ask him a question. He loves talking about this stuff, and we love talking to him, so we can't thank him enough for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Huge thanks to Nick. Huge thanks to Gary. And as always, we love it. We learn things that we didn't necessarily expect to learn every time that we have an interview. Some surprises dropped in there. We felt, you know what? We've talked to Gary a few times before. We'll ask him the questions that we don't necessarily expect an answer to, and then, he gives an answer. So that was I know. That was very much appreciated. And,
I'll tell you, when I saw those, and I'm going to bring it up again, when I saw those stamped baskets on the, for those of you that don't understand the difference, and we didn't really address it in the podcast, but, a cast basket is generally, it's welded together, and it's put to, it's or not welded together. It's there's a mold, and they pour the metal in.
They pour molten metal into the mold, and it casts the shape of the mold.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas a stamp basket, there's a thin sheet, not thin, there's a sheet of aluminum, and then there's a die that presses down on it and then forms it into the shape. And shorthand for reviewers many times is, if it's stamped, it's bad. Just by saying stamped, suddenly everybody knows, oh, it's a lower quality product. And I knew as soon as I saw that was going to be the first thing reviewers going to say. It's a shorthand. It's lazy. I don't agree with it, though I have in my past reviews have mentioned it, and
because there can be such a thing as a very cheap, thin, flimsy stamped thing, and that as a cumulative thing is a bad thing in a driver.
Right.
So yeah.
But if you look at what a subwoofer driver or a driver of any kind that has a stamp basket that is a cheap stamp basket, what you'll see is something that often looks a lot like it's trying to look like a cast basket. Cast basket will be thicker, it'll be more robust, it'll be stronger, more inert. But you look at this one from SVS, I'm like, holy moly, there is a lot of material here. This is not a insignificant basket they've got here, but you can tell it's stamped, and I definitely wanted to give them a chance to address that, because that was going to be the thing. Somebody, hey, if it doesn't, as it hasn't already come up on the question list, it's gonna come up. Should I get the old 2000 series now before they run out, or or because this new driver's not as good? I guarantee you, this company does not put out garbage. They never have. And they're certainly not going to start now. If they're using this basket, it's because it's just as good as the alternative, and it's less expensive. If that's not good enough for you, I don't know what to tell you, man.
The measurements tell the story. This thing actually got a little bit louder and lower in distortion than the outgoing 2000 series. So, if you need consoling that the basket has changed, just look at the ports. I think that'll console you.
I think the ports that he didn't address this. I think the ports are aluminum themselves.
Oh gosh, I'm not even sure on that, but it wouldn't shock me.
I think they are. I think they. I don't think they're plastic. I think they're aluminum. To be that large,
I don't know. It would have to be something as sturdy as that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anywho, so great interview. Thank you so much, Gary and Nick, for being on. And if you want to get your questions answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Happy New Year. Now go out and listen to something.
Happy New Year. want your question answered, send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.